Cities are a controversial topic when it comes to climate change. While an individual person living in a city will produce less CO2 than a person living in a suburban area like Greenfield, people in cities contribute much more to other things contributing to climate change. The city lifestyle is bad for the environment and systemically makes it harder to make green choices. While it is true that living in a city reduces the carbon footprint of an individual, when there are thousands or millions of individuals living in such a small area, it all adds up. With the climate crisis getting more and more dire every day, changes need to be made. While we cannot simply start over and rebuild our cities and infrastructure, we can change things to make them more sustainable. Cities are proven to be very unsustainable and bad for the environment. Some of the biggest contributors to cities' unsustainability are transportation, water and air pollution, and food waste. While there's a lot of public transportation in New York, there are still a large number of people who have cars. Cars can be extremely bad for the environment. Gas-powered cars specifically heavily contribute to CO2 emissions in cities. To gain a better understanding of ways cities can be improved, we spoke to an expert. Mark Heyman is a professor in the Department of Landscape Architecture and Regional Planning and the director of the Undergraduate in Sustainable Community Development Program in the Graduate Master Regional Plan at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. In an interview, he introduced us to alternatives being used by UMass to improve the sustainability of their campus. One of the strategies that UMass has been using is a great option to improve general sustainability without needing to physically replace or rebuild existing facilities.
Making sure that our new buildings and new infrastructure systems are sustainable, but also potentially preserving or rehabilitating some older buildings. Then in terms of architectural sustainability, again, state-of-the-art, energy efficient and water efficient systems are important, but also the most sustainable building is the one that's already been built. So the preservation and adaptive reuse of existing buildings, doing a sustainability retrofit to sort of work around that rather than take it out entirely, because whenever you replace something that exists with something new, you're creating a lot of waste, construction waste. And so retrofitting and renovating an existing building is going to be generally more sustainable than tearing it down and building another new, more energy efficient. UMass has a program where some of its historic buildings, they would like to preserve them and retrofit them. It's often very expensive particularly because it has to be made compliant with the American with Disabilities Act, so the accessibility issue, and then some of the systems need to be upgraded. So to make it more affordable, UMass has created what's called a buddy building system, where they construct a new building connected to that historic building, and that allows it to be compliant in terms of accessibility, and it makes the retrofit of the older building more affordable. So UMass is doing both, creating a new structure but also preserving an existing structure. Yeah, I would say hybridity is probably one of the key themes related to sustainability, that creating all sorts of brand new systems to replace existing systems and doing a complete replacement is not a particularly sustainable solution, or just working with existing systems is not the most sustainable solution, but sort of understanding what kinds of which parts of buildings and infrastructure can be preserved and retrofit, and which ones need to be replaced is really the key.
Human pollution in New York has heavily affected the water around it. In 2019, touching any of the water on the New York shorelines was unsafe because of the sewage in the water. Around 20 billion gallons of raw, untreated sewage is not run through sewage plants and is dumped into the water around the 5 boroughs. The effect that humans have had on the local ecosystems and life in the water around New York is detrimental. Stormwater pollution is a major environmental and public health issue in Los Angeles County, leading to unsanitary living environments, unhealthy surface waters such as lakes, creeks, and rivers, unhealthy ocean and beach conditions, and street and neighborhood flooding during the rainy season. It's created when trash, cigarette butts, animal waste, pesticides, motor oil, and other contaminants left on the ground are washed or thrown directly into storm drains. This toxic soup mixes with millions of gallons of rainwater and flows untreated into local creeks, rivers, and the ocean, polluting our waterways, as well as degrading neighborhoods and other natural resources. The Chicago River was once so polluted one swath became known for bubbles that would rise up from the rotting stockyard carcasses below. Today, on sunny afternoons, you can see floating wetlands, beavers, and boaters, but after a heavy rain, sewage is still sometimes dumped in the waterway, creating an environment that for humans can threaten a bad bout of diarrhea.
If a community can implement strategies to reduce the amount of stormwater that goes into the sewer system, to recycle gray water rather than have all the water go into a water treatment plant, those are ways to help infrastructure last longer. So using natural systems to perform a lot of the functions that traditional infrastructure performs.
Each year in the US, 72 billion pounds of food is wasted. New York State alone makes up 18% of that total. 3.9 million tons of food is wasted in New York and ends up in landfills every year. The food in landfills heavily contributes to the production of methane gas. Along with how much food is wasted, almost 13% of New Yorkers are food insecure. 68% of all food discarded in New York is still edible. Over 1 million tons of food goes into LA's landfills every year. Once in a landfill, rotten food scraps emit methane, a powerful greenhouse gas. Meanwhile, Los Angeles is home to the largest number of food-insecure people in the country. As of 2015, the city of Chicago produced nearly 55 million pounds of food waste, a staggering amount of food scraps for a city with fewer than 3 million people. Across the state of Illinois, that figure rises to a massive 19 million tons of food waste going directly to landfills as of 2019. The USDA estimates that between 30 and 40% of all food produced is trashed, either at the production, commercial, and retail, or individual consumer level. This is at a time when the Greater Chicago Food Depository estimates that 1 in 6 Cook County residents suffers from food insecurity. In order to ensure a community is sustainable, you not only need to see environmental sustainability, but the community needs to be life-sustaining. Cities often see far higher percentages of food insecurity in other less populated areas. To learn about ways to combat food insecurity, we spoke to Latifa Zayad, the Resiliency Planning Coordinator for NOAH, the Neighborhood of Affordable Housing.
So a lot of my work kind of dovetailed to urgent matters, emergencies of right now. And one of the big ones is food insecurity. So one of the things that we worked on doing is how do we get customized, culturally appropriate food in place for folks to come and not waste. Because a lot of times people, when they get free, they're like, okay, I like this, I like that, I like that. And then they'll walk home and then you'll find like the bread in the park and the potatoes on the tree, you know? So as much as you could kind of match what people want. So oftentimes what I would do is I joined a co-op. It was started by MIT, some students there from one of the innovation labs. And we piggyback off of restaurants we're already bringing in orders to kind of downgrade some of the costs, so it would be cheaper than Costco's or what have you. And then as a part of that, we both eliminated additional costs for trucks coming in, you know, putting the cost lower so that we could give more and greater value, and then customize what people said they wanted to come in. So that was kind of part of the effort of how do you listen for what people want, and if you're going to give in a dignified way.
The air pollution in New York is very severe. The health department has estimated that around 3,000 people die each year from the particulate matter in the air, and another 2,000 are hospitalized. Many cities have large amounts of fine particulate matter and ozone in the air. These pollutants are known to contribute to serious illnesses. LA and some of its surrounding communities have the worst air quality in the nation. Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Orange, Riverside, and Ventura counties all received F grades for particle and ozone pollution. The American Lung Association also released an annual report showing that 40% of all Americans live in an area with unhealthy levels of particle and ozone pollution.
So we live right next to the airport. We have environmental justice issues here because we're disproportionately affected for asthma and other things. And so what we did is we were the only one from this round to get this grant. And basically what it allows us to do is go to both residents, businesses, and some schools and nonprofits and go into their high frequented areas in some of their homes and put air sensors in to get a sense of how much more particulate matter is in their space that could be detrimental to their health. And then we're gonna put in HEPA filters in each of those. And then we try to make it a little artsy and fun too. It's always like my trademark. And we put Asian lilies on a pot, and you put a scan barcode so that each of the folks that participate in this can know what their average levels are for air quality and compare it to what EPA is doing in the area.
This grant allows NOAH to gauge if Boston has fallen victim to decreased air quality. If this project proves them correct, they will be able to provide aid to residents in improving their air quality. In addition, it is possible that this data could lead to legislation throughout Boston and/or Massachusetts to regulate and limit carbon emissions to improve the health of our air for the future. Creating new and improved cities that are truly sustainable is a difficult task that takes social change. While people in the younger generations can't do things like pass legislation or make these changes happen, we can fight for change in our own communities and in the communities around us.
Helping political decision makers, business people, community members shift their perspective from just their immediate short-term interests and concerns to a more long-term and sort of broader impact perspective is really important. I think those obstacles are the most challenging.
It's influenced young people who have come up after me to take on these careers. It's also influenced the circle of friends that I keep and how we kind of balance off each other in terms of ideologies.
The experience of teaching and advising students makes me very hopeful, makes me very optimistic, makes me feel very inspired. So I sort of feel like the next generation, the challenges are huge, they're daunting, but I have a high level of confidence that the students will go into the world very well prepared to address those.
This generation is our future. We are the change. There is hope. As the kids might say, the time is now to yassify our cities.